Long ago, in the quiet, moonlit villages of Mexico, a tale was whispered among families, passed down from generation to generation. A tale of sorrow, tragedy, and a ghostly figure that haunts the rivers and lakes, crying for her lost children. The legend of La Llorona, the weeping woman, has terrified locals for centuries. Her mournful wails are said to pierce the night, and her ghostly figure, draped in white, roams the waterside, forever searching. To this day, mothers warn their children to never stray too close to the riverbanks after dark, for La Llorona might mistake them for her own. The story begins with a beautiful woman named Maria, who lived in a small village nestled between mountains and a great river. Her beauty was known far and wide, and many men sought her hand in marriage, but Maria was not easily swayed. Eventually, a handsome, wealthy man from a distant town captured her heart. They married, and Maria bore him 2 children, a boy and a girl. For a time, they were happy. But happiness, like the current of the river, can be swift and fleeting. Over the years, Maria's husband began to grow distant. He would leave for long journeys, and when he returned, his eyes no longer sparkled for Maria. Rumors spread through the village that he had fallen in love with another woman. Consumed by jealousy, Maria's heart darkened. She felt betrayed, abandoned, and as her husband's love slipped away, so too did her grip on reality. One fateful evening, Maria took her 2 children down to the river. In a moment of madness and overwhelming sorrow, she did the unthinkable. She pushed her children into the rushing waters, watching as they were swept away by the current. The instant the water claimed them, the fog of rage lifted from Maria's mind, and she realized what she had done. Horrified by her actions, she plunged into the river, hoping to save them, but it was too late. Her children were gone, drowned. Despair overwhelmed her, and Maria threw herself into the river, her cries of agony echoing through the night. Her body was found downstream days later, but her soul never left. From that moment on, her spirit wandered the earth, mourning the loss of her children, eternally searching for them along the riverbanks. Maria's spirit, now transformed into La Llorona, became a cautionary figure, a warning to all who heard her tragic tale. Parents told their children that if they misbehaved, La Llorona would come for them, taking them to the watery depths where her own children perished. Over the years, sightings of the wailing woman have been reported across Mexico and the southwestern United States, particularly near rivers, lakes, and canals. Those who have encountered La Llorona describe her as a spectral figure, dressed in a long, flowing white gown, her hair wild and unkempt. Her face, hidden beneath a veil of grief, is sometimes said to be beautiful, though twisted in pain, while others claim it is a gaunt, skeletal visage, hollow and terrifying. But the most unmistakable sign of her presence is the sound, the mournful, heart-wrenching cry that cuts through the night air. Ay, mis hijos. Oh, my children. Her sorrow is endless, and her search is eternal. The legend says that La Llorona, in her desperate quest to find her lost children, mistakenly takes others, innocent boys and girls, whom she drowns in the river, believing them to be her own. Her presence brings a chill to the air, the sensation of being watched, and the unmistakable feeling that something tragic is about to unfold. One recent story tells of a young man named David, who grew up hearing the legend of La Llorona from his grandmother. She would warn him and his cousins never to play by the river after dark. "She will take you if you're not careful," she'd say. Though the children were scared, they dismissed it as just an old story to keep them from wandering too far. But David would never forget the night he heard the weeping for himself. He was older then, about 16, and he and a group of friends had decided to go camping near the very river his grandmother had always warned him about. It was late summer, and the air was thick with humidity, the sound of the river gently flowing nearby. They had a small fire going, and the laughter of the group filled the night as they told ghost stories, none of them suspecting that they were closer to a true terror than they realized. As the night grew later, David wandered away from the group, drawn toward the river by an eerie sense of curiosity. The further he walked, the quieter the world around him became. Even the sounds of insects and the flow of the river seemed to fade away, replaced by an unsettling silence. That's when he heard it, the unmistakable sound of a woman crying. At first he thought it was one of his friends playing a prank, but as he stood by the river, the crying grew louder, more desperate. It was the sound of utter despair. Then through the mist rising off the water, he saw her, a figure in white, standing on the opposite bank of the river, her head bowed low, her hair long and dark, and her hands covering her face. She wept, her cries echoing through the night. "I miss hijos," she wailed, her voice piercing the stillness. David's blood ran cold, and every story his grandmother had ever told him came rushing back. He knew immediately who she was. Frozen in fear, David watched as the figure slowly raised her head, her face still hidden by her dark hair. But when she spoke again, her voice was different, low and haunting, as if calling out to him specifically. "Donde están mis hijos? Where are my children?" Terrified, David turned and ran back to his friends, his heart pounding in his chest. But even as he fled, he could still hear her cries in the distance, chasing him through the trees. David never returned to that river, and to this day, he refuses to speak of what he saw. But the legend of La Llorona persists, her presence felt by those who dare venture near the water's edge at night. Some say she is a spirit of vengeance, punishing those who have wronged her. Others believe she is simply a lost soul, forever trapped in her grief, doomed to wander the earth in search of her children. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: her cries, full of sorrow and regret, still echo through the night, a reminder that the past is never truly forgotten. So if you ever find yourself near a river after dark, and the wind begins to whisper, and you hear the soft, distant sound of weeping, remember the story of La Llorona. And whatever you do, don't follow the cries, for you might find yourself face to face with the weeping woman, and like her lost children, you may never return.